that record. And I think you guys.
Do I get a copy of the recording?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Most certainly. We got somebody else coming in here as well. But Lyssa deHart is a founder through Invite Change. She coaches with them, but she does just her own coaching thing. Is it LyssaDeHart like .com or?
Lyssa deHart LLC. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so funny. Like my business, I've been in private practice since 2004. And so a bit. And I've kind of gone through multiple iterations of what the name of my business was. But for many years, I was Creative Human Solutions. And I really liked that. But when I decided to move away from what I was doing before, so here's a quick introduction to me. My name's Lyssa deHart. I'm an MCC coach with the International Coach Federation, and I am a recovering therapist. And so I had a private practice and I was a therapist for many years. And I decided in 2013, my husband had an opportunity for us to move. He had been stationed at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I was working there and had a private practice there. And when we decided that we were going to move, I decided, I don't know that I want to be a therapist anymore. I think I'm really ready to try something different. And I had taken this coach training course through what is now the Neuro Leadership Coaching through David Rock's program. And I had taken that in 2007, but I was a therapist. And so I felt like, yeah, I don't really need any of this stuff because I'm a therapist. So of course I know everything. And so I had to kind of work through my therapy bias a bit. But when we moved up to the Pacific Northwest in 2013, I'm like, I know I don't want to be a therapist anymore. I'm really ready for a change. I'd done that for 20 years at that point, and I wanted to do something different, but I didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. So I thought, hey, remember I took that coaching training back in 2007? Maybe it's time to get curious about that. And for me, I went to several different ICF meetings, and I started meeting people in the ICF Washington State chapter and going to some events and meeting people. And one of the things that became very clear to me was that I didn't really understand coaching. Like I understood therapy, but I didn't really understand what coaching was. And so as a result of that, I started taking classes in coaching. And like I said, I had started with the Neuro Leadership program, which I really liked, but I wanted something more local. Invite Change was local. So I started taking classes with Invite Change. And it was a mind bender as I was trying to figure out, how do you have a conversation and hold a container of a conversation and also demonstrate all of these competencies that are required to be demonstrated in order to show that you know how to hold a container of a coaching conversation. So, fast forward a bit, in 2014, I got my ACC. I had been coaching since 2007, a little bit in my practice. So I had some hours. And so I started coaching. I got my ACC in 2014, and I continued taking classes and coaching, and I got my Pcc in 2016. And then they were making some changes in the way that they were going to be doing MCCs. And I had an opportunity to do a bit of a Hail Mary pass towards my MCC because I could utilize hours that I had accrued prior to my coach training, which was going away. And I'm like, well, heck, I think I'm going to try and see if I can make this happen. And I really took a fast, hard, deep dive into how do you coach at an MCC level. And I got my MCC coach certification in 2018. But it was...
And that's 2,500 hours of coaching, right? You need
That's,
that?
yeah, you have to have
That's okay.
2,500 hours at a
Yeah.
minimum. I probably had over 10,000 hours of coaching at that point because I had been doing a lot of work where I was doing what was considered short-term, solution-oriented, fixed sorts of interventions, and basically coaching, very inquiry oriented. I had worked for the military for many years, working in short-term solution focused sorts of situations. So I had all these hours and I didn't want to get rid of them just because they happened before my coach training. So anyway, kind of a long convoluted story short, I was lucky to be able to be awake on the day that I noticed that I would lose all those hours if I didn't make a pitch for my MCC. And that sort of pushed me past any fear that I had about doing it also, and just kind of drove me really hard. So as a result of that, though, one of the things that has been sort of the boon or the benefit for me has been this ability to start to really look at the container of the competencies. And so I think it's wonderful that you've each had a different competency be brought to you and you have an opportunity to see it. I'm going to share my screen with you guys really quickly, make sure we're all in the same place. And let me know if you can see just my cover screen, or do you see what do you see when you
See everything.
So you see like,
See slide, next slide,
oh, so that's interesting.
bottom
Okay.
slide.
I'm not sure how to. All right. Well, then in that case, I'm going to not be in presentation mode because it doesn't matter. And I'll make this just really big. If that works for you guys, because I don't know how to make it work with these two screens that are supposed to work, but apparently are not. So humor with technology, and we press forward. So what we're taking a look at in our conversation today is really what I consider the second bookend of a coaching conversation: facilitates client growth. And so I have a couple questions for you guys, and please feel free to bring yourself off mic, off mute and just talk, because there's a small enough group of us. But what brought you here today? What is your interest in today's presentation?
Hi, this is Grace. The reason I came in to this presentation, which really, I made effort to be here with this crazy things going on, because past few years of being a coachee and trying to do coaching too, and this core competency of facilitating clients' growth, I see that's the end goal. But often I quite couldn't see or couldn't facilitate that, and always often wondering, is that all the conversation we had actually facilitated clients' growth, although we cannot measure it, but left me with a lot of questions. And I thought this is a strength of a coaching method compared to all other, including the therapy. So
Yeah.
I was really wanted to hear more, learn more about it.
Well, I really appreciate hearing that. And I agree with you. I think this is what really anchors learning. And I think that it is different than it is in therapy. Not that therapists might not do this, but I don't think this is typically the way therapists are trained to have conversations, where it is the way that coaches are trained to have conversations. And I agree with you. I think it is the thing that anchors the conversation in many ways. What are you hoping to leave the presentation with, Grace?
The practical, I hope that I have a next coaching session coming in 2 weeks. Me being a coachee, and the other one, I'm being a coachee. My both is, and I have some idea to bring with me. I will, shape that session in a what way, because I have particular people in my mind. So I will keep see your lecture through the lens of the people I'm coaching.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Anyone else? What brought you here and what are you hoping to take away? Sandra, I think you're talking, but you're on mute.
I always forget to unmute myself. Oh God, well, I'm Sandra, and I've been missing out, really, and Jeff knows it. I've been a coach for quite a long time, and mostly with Hispanic clients, and it's been a wonderful experience through the years. But my last coaching was, I would say, 2 years back, just when we were going into the pandemic situation. And I wanted to connect again. I needed to come in and just hear refreshing information that can really boost my energy again into a new coaching, because I finished my last coaching some time back, but I still keep connected with the last person I coached, because I knew that the circumstances had changed around the ministry of this particular person. And I felt that I needed to extend my gifts in coaching with that person. And I wanted to see the faces again. I wanted to see Jeff again and say thank you for being so committed and just pursuing us, during this difficult time. And I hope, because the title of your talk today is Facilitating Client Growth, sometimes I wonder if they're growing or not, if a client really is growing.
Yeah.
I have found myself with responses from clients that everything is going so topsy-turvy, so everything is just so great, that I feel that my contribution isn't really being effective for that person's growth. So maybe I'm missing something, and I would love to hear you talk about that. So
yeah, I appreciate that. I'll see how I can bring in some of the elements that I think are really important that lead to that sustainable growth on the part of the client. Princeton, I saw your hand go up also. What's bringing you here and what are you hoping to leave with?
I guess mine is because I'm a lifelong learner.
Yay.
But to be honest, I wanted to see how I could deal with, even after so many 3 years now of coaching, I'm still struggling with my agenda. Especially if you know who the client is. And you make assumptions. I've worked real hard to deal with that, but it still comes. I want to see how you're going to present this today to help me get clarity.
Well, we'll see. So if you don't, bring that back up.
Thank you.
Awesome. Anybody else? Okay.
We have Alicia in the chat said she's interested in how coaches challenge clients in a way that doesn't cause resistance.
Interesting. I'm not seeing the chat, so let me pull that over so I can find that also. And can we, okay, so yeah, how do coaches challenge clients in ways that doesn't cause resistance? And how do we define growth? Well, let's start with how do we define growth? So let's this is what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to really discuss the core competency 8, which is facilitates client growth. And what I want you to think about is this is not, none of these competencies are singular in the sense of they exist in a silo all by themselves. They are in fact a container, all of them. So when you start with core competency 3 and setting an agreement and right, like we're getting a clarity around what's important to the client, all the way to facilitating client growth, what you have is a container of a conversation. Now, mind you, this container does not mean that you go in a particular order. It doesn't mean that you have to do A, then you do B, then you do C, then you do D. It doesn't work like that. There are 4 sections of the core competency, and we're not going to be talking about all of them, but the 4 competencies are, or the 4 sections are really creating a foundation, which is around your ethical practice and embodying a coaching mindset, which is core competencies 1 and 2. There's co-creating the relationship, which is the second cluster of competencies, which includes establishing and maintaining agreements, cultivating trust and safety, maintains presence. You have your third cluster, which is core competency 6, listens actively, and 7, evokes awareness. And that leads into your 4th cluster, which is cultivates learning and growth, which is core competency 8, facilitates client growth. And so we're going to be speaking mostly around this particular competency. But again, none of these competencies are taken out of context with the entirety of all of the competencies. They work as a container for how we have conversations. And so I have a worksheet that I will send to you guys through Jeff. I wasn't able to drop it into the chat, so you'll get it that way. But I thank you, Jeff. There takes you to the core competencies themselves. So when I think about these competencies in particular, I think ethical practice is something that is how we are, how transparent we are in the agreements that we're setting for our overarching coaching relationship, right? How we treat our clients, how we are respectful to differences, how we are listening versus telling, right? And Princeton, this kind of maybe reminds me a little bit of what you were saying also, how we are in the space of being taught by our clients versus teaching our clients, and really staying in that role of coach. And when we look at it from an ethical framework, when we say we are coaches, we are agreeing to be the coach who is learning from the client, not necessarily in the role of teaching the client. And so these start to be the nuances that shift how people actually learn. When you think about it, how many times have you been told what you needed to do? This is what you need to do to solve this personal life problem of yours. If you would just go do that, you would be fine. How many times has that A happened, and how many times has that B worked for you?
So as a Christians, so preachers, every Sunday we need to tell the people what you need to do. And then church commerce, we are sitting in the pew, and every Sunday we are heard just what to do. Mm-hmm. And then most of the time, it doesn't work for me.
Right. That's the problem, right? Because we can tell people what to do, and it may come from a really great place in our heart, and it may be in philosophically in alignment with our values and our belief system. What we're sharing is coming from a good place, but human beings do not learn by being told what to do unless they are doing something like building a chicken coop. If you are doing something like changing the oil in your car or building a chicken coop, you can go on YouTube and learn how to do it and have somebody tell you how to do it. They'll give you all the ingredients you need to make the best chicken coop possible, and you will be able to go and build your chicken coop. If what you're talking about, though, is how to have confidence and how to trust in, in the universe or in the Lord, or if you're talking about how to be a good person in the face of fear, these are not things that we can have a diagram that tells us how to do it, and we go forth and we just do it. That's the hard stuff of life, right? And so part of the competencies is, as the coach, I don't throw away all of the knowledge that I have. I use it, though, to inform my curiosity. And so what I become is an incredibly good asker of useful questions. And when I say useful questions, I mean, there really aren't bad questions or good questions, but there's a scale of usefulness in the kinds of questions that I ask a client that pulls from the client what it is that they know, that pulls from the client what their values are and how they can use those values to hold themselves accountable to what they say is important. How they are, what is important about this experience that they're having that they really want to focus on, and what about that do they want to focus on, and what do they want to have be different. So what we're in the job of doing as a coach is we're not about consulting to them or educating them or teaching them or telling them or solving for them. That is not the role of a coach. And so that goes back to that at the beginning of ethics. As soon as we step out of coach role and turn into an educator, a consultant, somebody telling you what to do, we've stepped out of the role of trusting that this person has the capacity to get to where they need to go with our help through our curiosity, but they have the knowledge inside of themselves. And if they don't, they have the capacity to get it. And we may help them think about it in, other ways. So for instance, I'm thinking of a situation in which case the client was like, I really don't know very much about X. And it's like, well, how do you like to get your information? And the client says, I love to listen to audiobooks. Have you gotten any audiobooks on the X topic? So that they're not hearing it from you necessarily, but you might be offering them an idea, because you want them to start to gather the information and do the work, because we want it to be something that comes from inside of them, not from outside of them. It's the only way that we embody change, and we have to embody the change in order to have it be sustainable through time, which is what I love about coaching versus teaching and counseling and all these other things, is because in teaching, counseling, and consulting, there's an awful lot of, I'm the expert and I'm going to teach you what you need to do in order for you to be successful. But there's very little ownership on the part of the client that embodies that learning in a way that they can then, when I'm not there to micromanage them or to go, hey, what you doing? They don't have the capacity to sustain it. Whereas if it comes from inside of them through thoughtful conversation, where they're really having to think about it through their own head, and they're the ones who are trying to sort through it, and we're asking questions that maybe, like when you notice you say that, it sounded like your voice changed. What just happened there? I don't know the answer to that question. But the client can say, I'm realizing X, Y, Z. They've now heard themselves say something. How much more powerful is it for them to say it for themselves than for me to say, hey, I noticed your voice changing and I think that means X, Y, Z. Right? And so this is a key piece of it. We tend to grow up in our lives as human beings in ways that we want to become experts. We get a lot of our ego satisfaction out of knowing things, being the person that people come to, right? Solving problems. And in fact, for many of us, and I speak as myself included in this, many of us, you know, there's something really powerful about feeling like you have helped somebody, right? But there is a power differential that is really important to pay attention to when I come in as the helper, as the expert, and you, client, are the receiver and the novice. It is a parent and child dynamic from a transactional analysis perspective. And it throws people into a childlike state where they always need you to tell them. It's also exhausting when they don't do it right. And we go from being the compassionate parent to being the critical parent. Why? I keep telling you this. Why can't you just do it? Right? Whereas if what we're doing is we're shifting into a place of adult to adult. And I can say to you, look, I don't know whether this would work for you, but this is the experience that I've had. And these were the struggles that I had with it. And these were the things that I had to kind of consider and think through as I was learning to make my own decision. How does that land on you as you hear me say that? And what of it is of use for you in this moment? The client then has to make the meaning themselves. Right. And at that point, I'm not telling them what to do. I may be sharing transparently, I too have struggled, and my struggle looked like this, but I'm not saying, hey, you know, if you want to be like me and have a life like me, you have to do exactly what I have done, which isn't fair. Yes, Grace. You're unmuted.
It's just the one I have a little, the defining question. I mean, that's definition defining for myself too. In those two, where you tell what to do, even if out of a full compassion, and it just want to help and teach you how to or do it. I mean, for instance, you make an example of children, like my son and my daughter. If you just to follow this instruction, I know you will get that from there. And then there is another extreme is, okay, adult, you are not, now you're adult, it's your business, it's not my business. You take care of your own stuff. And between that, so this coaching your the method is just something different from first or second. It's not even middle.
I'm not sure that I understand your question exactly, but I think what I'm hearing you say, and I want to be really clear, there are parent and children relationships where you are the actual parent and you have actual children. And that is a dynamic that is necessary. Children don't have enough experience. You're their parent. That's different. We're talking about you and I are in a coaching relationship. You're an adult and I'm an adult, but I come in with a decision that I think you need to learn. And now I'm acting like a parent and treating you like a child. There's a difference because we're both adults. So how do we then have adult to adult types of conversations? Does that make more sense?
Yes, yes. Oops. Yes, it is. It doesn't make sense, but you are trying to bring that to adult conversation. I guess that what I want to learn a little more is you make your own decision, but the coach is try to help them to find that question. It's not just that you go find your question.
Right. No, it isn't that.
Yes.
No, it isn't about you go off and find, and I'm just going to sit here and listen quietly while you talk. It is that we are asking questions that we don't know the answer to so that we can explore with the client what is really important here, what is really happening, what is it that they really need to explore so that they can take whatever their next steps are towards the things that they say are important to them. And I'm talking about this a bit because I think that it's important to have a sense of the framework of the entire conversation before we can ever facilitate client growth, right? Client growth does not come out of a vacuum of me telling you a bunch of stuff and then you and me going, so what are you taking away from today? And doing it that way. It comes out of a conversation. So there have been some updates to the markers. Sorry, I'm moving you guys around so I can see the slide myself. The competencies have been changed as of 2020, and they've updated the markers, which are the PCC markers, which when you think about coaching and joining an organization like ICF, what you're going to be held to is you're going to be accountable to the ICF core competencies. And the markers really are the behaviors that express the meaning of the competencies. And so I bring that forward because sometimes people are confused. Why are there competencies and why are there markers, PCC markers? Have you guys had that kind of like, why do we need both? Why can't we just have one or the other? Maybe not.
No, probably not as much.
Not as much.
Yeah.
So the reason is they do have them. And if you go into ICF and you decide you're going to get your ACC or you're going to get your PCC or you're going to get your MCC, you're going to have to demonstrate coaching. And when you do, they're going to be looking for certain markers to have been met. And so I'm going to just share with you really quickly, and I wonder if I can make this big enough for all of us to read it. But this facilitates client growth. The competencies are on this side. Works with the client to integrate new awarenesses, insights, or learning into their worldview. Partners with the client to design goals and actions. Acknowledges and supports clients' autonomy in the designing of goals, actions, and methods of accountability. Supports the client to identify potential results or learning from the identified actions. Invites the client to consider how to move forward. Partners with the client to summarize learning. Celebrates progress and success, and partners to close the session. There is, in the markers, it is almost identical with a couple of caveats. So again, the coach is inviting the client to explore progress towards what the client states they want. Coach invites the client to state or explore the learning that they've had about themselves, who they are as a human being, as well as exploring how the learning is impacting their perspective of the situation that they've brought forward. Inviting the client to consider how they'll use this new learning. Partnering to design post-session thinking, reflections, or actions. Partnering with the client to consider how to move forward, including what resources or supports or potential barriers might be there. Partnering with the client to design the methods of accountability for themselves. Celebrating client progress and learning, and partnering with the client on how they want to complete the session. So there's not much difference when it comes to core competency 8 between the competencies and the markers. And so when I think about facilitates client growth, how I hold this particular competency in my mind is really with the facilitation of agreement setting, which did you guys have somebody come in, Jeff, and do core competency 3 agreement setting?
Yes. Yeah. We talked about agreements. Yeah.
So agreement setting is at the beginning in the sense of, I need to understand what it is that you want to talk about today in our time together and what is important about it and what will be different by the time we're done having this conversation. Then we are going to have a big exploration in the sandbox between once we understand what it is that's important and what we're talking about and where you want to be by the end of the conversation, which links to the facilitation at the end, which is What did you learn from this conversation and this exploration in the sandbox? Does that start to make sense? How these two bookends hold the container of the exploration in the middle? Any questions coming up around this for you guys?
Lyssa, can I say that as I've just started my mentor coaching process, and we've been kind of emphasizing or sitting with this facilitates client growth. And for me, like my shift in understanding has been, because when you think facilitates client growth, you kind of just think generically. I was thinking like just broadly, well, everything's going to facilitate the client's growth. But really, it starts to make me think like you're talking about, like, this is like at the end of the conversation, where you're really saying like, hey, what did you learn? And what are you going to do? So it's really kind of, it seems to me like pretty active.
Yes.
Like it's really like that space where we're saying, what's next? How are you going to get there? And allowing them to like come up with the direction and the goals and the actions.
Yes. So, and that, I love that you bring that up. It is how we help the client to anchor. So if what we're doing in agreement setting is we're priming the pump for the conversation, we're priming the pump for what's important and where the client wants to go in the conversation. What we're doing in facilitates client growth is we are anchoring the growth. We are anchoring awareness and understanding. And to your point, Jeff, and I love you forever for bringing this forward, we are not designing the client's actions for them. We are not telling them what they need to do next. We are instead asking them, out of everything that we've talked about today, what is really showing up for you as most important to explore? And that might be some real specific actions, or it could be, I need to just sit with this insight for a while and reflect. I need to sit with how it feels. Like, is this even accurate for me? It could be simple. It doesn't have to be complex, but the client needs to come up with it. And it's sort of funny. I had a conversation with a client, a potential client at one point, and he said to me, before we go any further, do you give homework? And I started laughing and I said, no, I never give homework. He goes, how do you do coaching if you never give homework? And I'm like, oh, I do coaching because you will always come up with your own homework, but I will never give it to you. Right. And I think it's really important for ownership. So if you find yourself in coaching relationships and your clients are not doing their homework, it's more than likely because you've created it for them in some way and kind of helped them to get to, you're going to do XYZ, versus you, client, what is going to be most meaningful to you? What's most valuable to help you really play with and understand or anchor this learning that you've had? Where the client is at choice, where we're being led by the client to the exercises and to the homework or actions that are going to be most meaningful to them to anchor their learning so that they can play with it. And then when we come back, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, but they are attached to it because it's theirs. They came up with it. Right. And so that's how I see this facilitation at the end, is the anchoring of the learning, the asking for accountability. I never give myself as accountability either. I used to be like, sure, you can text me an emoji every time you do it. I don't do that anymore. I'm much more along the lines of, you know, what value or character strength do you personally have, client, that could really support you following through with this agreement you're making with yourself? This is an agreement with me. This is not my life. I leave this conversation. I have my own work to do. Right? Yes, Grace.
Can you give a one or two examples of how to success with that? How you give the accountability, not in a way, I mean, just the
well, just like I just said it right now, I'd say that, like, how will you hold yourself accountable? What value or what character strength do you possess that could be most useful in really holding you accountable to follow through with your agreement to yourself? might be exactly how I would say it.
Lyssa, is it fair to say, like, who can you ask to check in on you with this? Or
That's fine to do, because they may come up with, my kids are so great. I think what I'll do is I'll use my kids. They're my greatest resource. You don't need to plant that seed for them that they need this external person, because remember, if this is important to them, we're supporting them to have an internal generation of capacity. I have the capacity. I say, this is important to me. This is meaningful to me. I'm making this one up. I'm going to write a book. Well, I'm not really making it up. I did write a book, and I'm actually writing another book, but that's beside the point. This is something that's important to me. I could ask my husband to be my accountability partner, but how often do people do that? And then they're like, would you quit bugging me? I told you I was going to work on it. Now, all of a sudden, we're projecting this thing out onto somebody else when it is our thing. If it's that important to me, what do I need to pull on internally that is one of my God-given gifts, like determination or stubborn grit? Right? Like that might be something that, is one of my character strengths, is that I'm dogmatic about something, right? How can I use that to hold myself accountable versus making you, Jeff, now you're accountable for me to follow through with my actions? So I would encourage you to support your clients to find their internal accountability. Some people are still going to use their kids or their husband or their whoever, and that's totally cool also, but you don't need to plant that seed for them. So I'm wondering if we can do a short coaching demo, and I don't know if anybody has a coaching topic that they would like to do some coaching on in a short, 20-minute coaching session. But if there's a volunteer who has a real genuine topic, not a pretend topic, but something real, I would love to do a coaching demonstration with you. And if not, I have a recording that I can use and let you guys hear.
Oh, somebody, I'm sure, wants some master coaching, some master level coaching.
Grace, was that you putting your hand up?
Actually, I was an example of the coachee last time. So those of you who are
so she's saying everybody else, you're on point here for this.
If you are interested to continue to hear the following, I will be volunteer, but I want to give that chance to someone else first if anyone else wants to be
yes, thank you. Sam, was that your hand that just went up? He's like, no, I was.
No, I just looked up my glasses.
Now, remember, coaching doesn't have to be because you have a problem you need to resolve. It could just be thought partnership, right? It doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can be a positive thing that you're moving towards also.
Anybody else?
And I also have, oh, go ahead, Sam.
It seems that we have a volunteer here.
Okay, I like how you're passing the buck over there to Grace. So Grace, do you have a topic you really feel passionate about talking about, or is this something you're just kind of gonna make happen?
No, it is an ongoing topic. Then I have to think a little bit of what I want to grow. I mean, if that's the top,
we're going to do an entire coaching conversation. So it's an entire conversation. It's not just facilitates client growth. You and I are going to start at the beginning and go through the whole thing. not just the end. I also have a demonstration that I can let you guys listen to, which might give you give Grace a break, since she was the client last time also. So, or Jeff, did you have a topic that you'd like to do coaching around?
I mean, I do, there's something I could be coached around, unless Grace really wants the step back in.
If Jeff wants, go ahead. That's fine. Me too.
All right, Jeff, looks like it's us.
Okay.
So what I am going to invite is everybody to go on mute, and please stop your video so that all I see is Jeff and myself. So Sandra and John, I need you to turn off your videos, please. So Jeff, anything that you need in order to kind of create some safety and some space here in this moment with each other?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think, you know, I know everybody here, and I'm very comfortable with them and appreciative of this chance just to chat.
Wonderful. And I'm going to pull down the curtains for myself so that I'm just really focused in my conversation with you. So is there something you mentioned that you had a couple topics that you might want to talk about? Is there one in particular that seems most important to you?
Yeah, I'm pondering either like just my own just kind of way of managing work and what's important, or my own wrestling with like use of social media, and what does that mean, or what is that, my relationship to it maybe.
Okay.
And
If you think of those two, which one is drawing you as the most important of the two?
probably how I manage my my regular working life. Social media is always something that's like resonating in there, and maybe it's part of like the management of like the workspace life, because I use it, I guess, primarily around like promoting things like this on Facebook or whatever, but it's not my favorite thing in the world. And you know, when Facebook was down last week, was that last week? Facebook was down for like 6 hours. I was like, thank God. Who needs that? Who needs
That's right.
like,
Take a break.
constantly like rolling through that stuff?
Yeah.
So
managing this sort of work life, it almost sounds like a little bit, is the piece that seems most drawing your attention.
yeah.
What is the importance of that capacity, that managing of work?
Well, I pretty much am my own boss. I've kind of, you know, I mean, I have a boss. I work with a team of people. We're of course given like some things to do, but like how I'm ordering my days, how I'm structuring things, how I'm managing things is like all in my court. And that's really been the case. You know, I was a pastor for 17 years, started a church, kind of always been like that self-starter, organizer. Have found certain ways of like managing and I think doing fairly well at that, but also finding, you know, like just wondering how I could like kind of improve that space, wondering how do I make my days the most kind of productive? How am I prioritizing? There's a little bit of everything that I'm, you know, doing, from coaching to retreat leading to trying to promote some of my own stuff along those lines of like retreat leading and coaching. Also happens in the context of my job. And then just getting caught in the like, I'm just answering emails for 4 hours and just kind of going to the next like to do or just hitting something to just get it off the to-do list. And
I have this experience of you right now, like, and please correct it if it's the wrong one, but I
Yeah.
almost see you like juggling.
yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
metaphor. Yeah,
Yeah, the juggling constantly.
yeah.
What does it do? Like, what is the experience you would like to be having at the end of the day from all this juggling? Is there some experience that you would like to have where you're not maybe juggling quite so many things?
Mhm. Yeah, I think like I have the picture at the end of the day. I know when I have that kind of sense of like
Mhm.
satisfaction at the end of the day, or able to like look back and feel like I've as much as I'm a person that likes to be about being and kind of being centered, I also like to get stuff done. I like things done.
Yeah.
I like it if I look back on the day, I'm like, oh, this got done, this got done, this got done, this got done. And if it seems like some significant pieces were cared for,
Yeah.
that or, but sometimes that's not always it, right? Sometimes it's looking back on a day and feeling, because like the relational connections were meaningful. They're okay. There's something there, because I just remember last week there were several like conversations that were coming up, and I was like looking to get into the Zoom call and get out of the Zoom call, right? Like it was like, oh, we got this half-hour Zoom call, we're gonna get it done, and then I got to go on to the next thing. And the half-hour Zoom call turned into an hour and 15 minutes, and it was probably the most significant thing of the day.
Yeah, this idea of juggling towards moving towards satisfaction, but the satisfaction, if I'm hearing you correctly, is really around how you're having meaningful relationships.
Yeah, I derive a lot of my, I don't want to say value, sense of purpose, sense of like it, in allowing for that space,
Mhm.
and feeling like impactful relationships or conversations or experiences are being had, but at times feeling like pulled by all the dang little this
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. So at the end of this conversation, what would make this most useful as we explore the way that you show up meaningfully in relationships?
Yeah, just maybe some way of just in my own sense of going, of recognizing that how can I be present in those moments when they're given? What makes me fully present to those moments, and not get so anxious about getting to the next thing, or just getting this done, because I want to be in this space with this person, but
Yeah.
sometimes there's an anxiety of the urgency of the whatever's next.
Yeah, there was an interesting question you just asked yourself, which is what allows you to be present in that moment?
Yeah. And it's being able to put aside the concerns with getting something done,
Mhm.
or a certain amount of things done, or not, or being attentive presence, being a presence with who's before me, and not being driven by all the little things I want to cross off the list by the end of the day.
Mhm. What is the experience that you have when you're in that fully present moment with another human being?
Oh, it's just, and I think this is where coaching has been a wonderful, like helpful process for me. It's not like Princeton mentioned, like having his own agenda, and it's truly finding myself in a place where I'm like, oh, I'm on board with whatever is happening here. I'm not trying to push my agenda for you, or even to just like get to the end of the conversation, or like, how can we wrap this up? Like, oh, we're here,
Mhm.
and I'm in a more authentic posture of really listening.
So as you hear yourself say that, and there's the minutia that needs to be juggled, but there's this also this sense of the meaningful connectedness that you also enjoy. How do you discern when it's like, how do you discern when you need to shift your attention from one thing to another and then back? I mean, how do you make these discernments?
Sometimes there's when I'm not in a flow, there's not much discernment going on, right? It's just like picking off the next thing. One thing that's helpful to me is I do have a practice of sometimes like intentionally plotting out the day at the beginning of the day and writing in all the things that are going to happen, but also like just understanding like I'm holding this loosely, but it's giving me some structure and some shape so that, like, you know, after an hour of emails and to-dos, I can let that go, move on to the next thing. It does help me be more fully present to whatever it is I've kind of like decided to put into that space. I just think sometimes I put way too much stuff into all the spaces.
And how do you discern what things you need to stop juggling for? Like, how do you discern what all you're juggling? Because it sounds like you may be juggling even, I don't know. I just have this Steve Martin vision all of a sudden.
Yeah.
How many cats can you juggle?
Yeah. And I think I want to be more discerning about what I'm picking up to juggle.
Yeah. And how do you start to pay attention and do that consciously with intentionality?
Yeah. That's what I want to figure out. Because I mean, I'm called, there are things I have to do. There are things that need to be done, but are there other things that can be put down or not the priority or not essential? And how do I just have a more discerning space around what it is I can hold?
Is there a different energy or experience that you have when it is something that is really important that you pick up and juggle versus when you're juggling something that you really don't even have any energy for, but you're still doing it because it's on some list somewhere?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
What is that? What is that shift for you?
It's just engagement, not feeling the kind of like heaviness or the weight of how am I pushing through this. When it's the things that I'm truly enjoy or that engage me creatively, there's more of a lightness, there's more of a energy. I think some of the difficulty around my just workspace overall right now is like it's very isolated. It's me in my office here. I mean, I have a great team of people that I work with, a great staff, but we're all kind of like isolated because we can't get together. And when everything I've done, for my job the last 2 years has been on Zoom. And I'm a relational person, so I'm missing that, like being in the room with others and like playing off their energy and us getting creative together. It's just harder. It's harder to do on Zoom.
Yeah. It's harder to do on Zoom. I'm not hearing it's impossible to do on Zoom.
No, because it's happened on Zoom and there are great things have happened, and I've led some virtual retreats that I feel like people really have connected with and have found it to be some good life-giving space. Part of that because we kind of limited the Zoom. It's not like all on Zoom. It was like, hey, go be for a while. And
right,
then
like
together
come back.
for a little bit of a space with each other. So
I want want to just touch base on where we are in the conversation. I know it was sort of this idea of all the things that you were juggling in life, and then towards the satisfaction of meaningful relationships. What else needs to be explored around this topic as we're, I'm looking at the time in the next, few minutes?
I'm not sure, because I really am not sure if there's a resolution.
Yeah, and what if there isn't a resolution, but maybe something to sit with as
Yeah,
a part of the exploration that's ongoing about how you determine.
yeah. I mean, I like the metaphor of the juggling, or the kind of the, or you could think of the spinning of the plates, the like, I mean, there's a part of me that yearns for kind of like less is more, go deeper with fewer things. And just wondering, as I kind of look ahead, like this next month for me is crammed with like many things from now until Thanksgiving, but in December, things kind of open up. And then looking at next year, I'm wondering if like there's space here to sit with like some discernment, instead of just like, part of me is ready to like fill next year's calendar with, coach trainings and retreats and all the things. And we're having a big staff retreat next week, and we're gonna be talking about all the things next year. I'm like, I do want to step into that, not with this like, okay, what needs to be done? Like,
yeah, what shows up for me as you're saying that is almost like, how do you create the healthy boundary that you need so that you can navigate this balance? It isn't like a hard line balance, like it's not a teeter-totter, right? It's a wavy gray area, but how you navigate that intentionally.
yeah.
So what are you taking away from this conversation? What's shown up as useful exploration?
I think just for me, I operate better when I can create the space to think about how I'm creating the space. Like, to take the intentional time to, look at the bigger picture, and to be more discerning about how I'm holding that space and what needs done within it. I want to get back to, I used to take like a day a month of just true kind of contemplation, being away from everything. And I'd like to get back into that rhythm, which helps my discernment process. But I think it'd be great to couple that with a day a month that's truly like just about the intentional process of me looking ahead and saying, what's next? What's important?
And so what action comes out of that awareness for you? Actions, depending.
I need to stick it on my calendar and stick to it. That's because it easily gets bumped. It's like, contemplative prayer day, and then like, oh, this thing or that thing, or well, I got the contemplative prayer day. That's space.
Interesting. So what holds you accountable to that, the importance of that agreement and honoring that for yourself?
Well, I liked what you were saying earlier about like trying to find that accountability within yourself, rather than saying, oh, I should have Carolyn, my wife, ask me every month, or like, or my best friend ask me every month, because like, honestly, that never works.
Yeah.
But I think it's just like, really like holding that space is what all right, here's the thing. And here's my confession, everybody here. Holding that space is what I am telling everyone they need to do.
Yes. Yes. So it's around honoring your agreement with yourself so that you're in alignment with the values that you espouse.
Yes. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. So then what's your next step?
It's to think more intentionally about what this space that's going to be opening up
Mhm.
looks like. It's because I think I want to like kind of utilize that time and space well in terms of, thinking about next year and what
Mhm.
I'm a kind of process like I appreciate process. I think there's value to process. And I think if I like think about what my process is, how I want to honor what I value and what I am inviting others into in their own space,
Mhm.
I think I have an opportunity to sit with that and to be grateful for that and to be intentional about, taking some days.
And how do you protect that space and time for yourself so that you look in the mirror and are like, yeah, I put down that cat.
I need to, yeah, put down that cat. Yeah. Don't pick that cat back up.
Leave that cat alone.
I need to think about what's going to hold me to that. Because I've said this before, I've done this before, and sometimes I'm good at the practice. Sometimes I am good at the practice of holding the space. So I think I need to reflect on like what's gonna keep me there.
Yeah. Is there anything else you really want to say out loud for yourself as we come to a close?
I just think I need to offer myself the same grace that I like to offer others.
Yeah.
And know that this is going to be I'm not going to get it all figured out and have, December is not going to be the magic month. And I have 2022. Well, 2022 is just going to like roll perfectly. But to like be able to look back and know and see like where transformations happened in me and to know I am a different place than I was before, and I can continue to grow and to be grace-filled with myself as I do that.
Thank you so much for being my partner today.
Thank you, Lyssa. Appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, you're very welcome, and thank you. And let's, I guess, bring everybody back. I'm looking at the time, and I want to make sure that we have time to answer some questions that may have shown up for folks.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I just overheard your conversation. So I want to tell you, Jeff, that I really appreciate the spaces you are making through your position role among us. So I believe I'm growing as a facilitator and a church planter as a pastor. So I want to really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
It's nice. So what did you notice in the coaching and specifically maybe even around core competency 8 around facilitating client growth?
Could I say, Lyssa, that from the very beginning, I think that the use of the image of a juggler was very useful. At least it revealed that you were connected to what he was saying. It identifies what is part of the issue that Jeff is dealing with prioritizing. So many things on the plate and he doesn't know everything is important, and yet it's become a problem not to respond to every single need. And that image was used repetitively, was used even Jeff used it.
And he even turned it into spinning plates, right?
Right, that's right. And you made a question at one point, The question was, what are you taking away from this conversation? But he had already answered that question when he said, I think less is more. I need to go deeper with less.
Mhm.
And so for me, that was a revealing moment in the entire conversation. He
Mhm.
came to a conclusion. Obviously, the rest of the questions were very valuable, but I thought that moment was very revealing, that he was able to say to himself, I need to go deeper with less.
Yeah. And if I had told him that, would it have been nearly as useful for him? And Jeff's here so he can answer for himself.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's, and I think part of what was helpful to me was like I wanted, as we're in this coaching conversation and it's coachy, like I wanted to have some great answers for you at the end of how and just a little realization of like, oh, I might not have the answers. I might need to sit with this, or like, it's okay. How do we give our coachees also freedom to like, you don't have to have arrived.
Yeah, life isn't like one coaching session isn't like a package that you have gone out and gotten this perfect gift, and you've now perfectly packaged it and you've got a bow and you just sort of hand it to your client.
Yeah, I mean, it just made me,
life is messy.
It made me realize like our coachees might feel that way sometimes. They might just be grasping for answers to make us feel like we were a good coach.
Yeah.
And, and because as coaches, we're like, well, we got to get you there. And sometimes they're like grasping for answers just to make us feel okay. And then, so it was like, I think that's helpful. It'll be helpful for me as I'm working with coachees to be like, I don't know, try to give more permission there without saying like, hey, you don't have to have any answers, but,
but allow what shows up to show up.
Yeah.
And not feel the need to put a bow on it. John, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, kind of overall, one of the things that I think was striking is how hard Jeff was working. He was working much harder than you were.
Yes. That's the secret.
And just watching that is really, really striking just to see that.
Yeah. There's a real simplicity when we set up the agreement and we get clarity. And I love that Sandra brought this forward, but I shared with him, I have this I'm having this experience or vision as you're talking of juggling. I'm not sure that's accurate. Correct me if I'm wrong. I gave him space to come up with something else, right? But what it did was it took us out of talking about his day timer.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk about his day timer. We didn't talk about what work-life balance was supposed to look like. And from this metaphor, and I believe very deeply in the use of metaphors, do a whole training on metaphors and how to use.
I've seen it. I might have you come back to do that one for us.
Happy to do that one with you guys also. But there is power in these idea containers because they light up the client's brain. And sometimes if we bring the metaphor forward, like I did in this case, I was really getting the sense of that metaphor, but I leave it open so the client can change the metaphor. I go with the client metaphor. But it became kind of also a lightening because then we were juggling, and then I had this vision of Steve Martin, which I have literally not thought of that movie in years, but it made me kind of laugh, and then it kind of made you laugh. And so it also allows the lightening, which is required for our brain to be in a space of open and receptive creativity. Mm-hmm. A brain that feels judged in a negative way shuts down. This is the problem with telling people what to do, right? So we want to lighten things. We want to have joyful humor. We want to have that sense of I'm being heard and that respect that comes from listening to the language that the person is bringing forward, but then having fun playing because I'm asking all kinds of questions. And in fact, one of the questions that I asked was the one he asked himself. That's a really good question. And you notice, and he said, yeah. And then I stayed quiet and didn't fill in the gap. And then he answered his own question. So utilizing silence and utilizing the questions that the client brings forward makes it so much easier to coach. Not working hard to find the perfect question. He brought it forward all by himself.
Mhm.
It's exactly where his mind went, right? So I'm going to share my slides one more time as we are, and I'm here for the duration to answer any other questions that are coming up. But I did want to say, you can always find me on LinkedIn, so please feel free to do that. I also have a free video series called Common Coaching Mistakes, which is I go through a bunch of different things that I think are, useful things that coaches do and that they aren't so useful. And so I'll put these in the chat. And if you're interested, you can get a hold of me in any number of ways. But I also have a new podcast out called The Coaching Studio, and I talk to MCC coaches, and I'm really just doing an exploration of how they got into coaching, what they've learned about themselves, because I think that's the other thing that coaching offers us is this opportunity to continually grow ourselves. And, one of the things that I love about coaching, and it happens in therapy also, but it doesn't happen quite as often, is I have a coach. I believe in coaching. I have a coach. I am a coach. I get coaching supervision. I've gotten coaching supervision for several years. I do coaching supervision for where it's like, this client's driving me crazy. Let's look at that. I love this client so much, I forget to ask them difficult questions. Let's look at that, right? Like there's lots of different ways. Or this client came with my life story. How do I unpack them from me because they're talking my story so much, right? Like how do we have cleanness in our conversations with the people that we're working with so that we can show up and be the best conduit to their wisdom, right? And I think, and so in going back and then to facilitating client growth, I didn't need to tell Jeff what he needed to do, right? But I have a sense that now that he's made the connection between this is what I tell other people to do and I'm not doing it, and I've made this confession in front of all of my friends, there's a bit more accountability there, right? To being in integrity with his own word with himself. These are powerful motivators. We don't need somebody else. Right? Any other questions or thoughts or insights or comments or things you would have done differently or anything?
I think my last observation just from our session, Lyssa, is that sometimes it's just helpful to hear yourself think it out, and all that stuff, all the stuff has been just rattling around my brain, or when I'm sitting in that space of just being like, oh, what am I doing? And then for me to be like, oh yeah, maybe I need to get back to like somebody coaching me occasionally, like that we can all benefit from this coaching kind of space, and to invite others to be coaching for us. And in this coaching network, there's a lot of room and opportunity for us just to do that for each other.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, and it's really nice because like, I mean, I do a mentor coaching group. And so I have people in the group. And so I'll have like Sam is coaching Sandra, Sandra's coaching Grace, Grace is coaching Princeton, Princeton's coaching Jeff, Jeff's coaching John, John's coaching me, and I'm coaching Sam. So it ends up being where you have your own coach and you have your own client. It's also a really great opportunity to record your coaching, because there's nothing like having real clarity around what your client is actually offering and what your follow-up question actually is. I use a program called Ray Notes and I love it. And I put my audio up there and I get a transcript and I start going through what it is that the client offered and what I heard and what my follow-up question was. Nothing has shifted my coaching faster than doing my own self-reflective process on where I got hooked or where I stepped over something because it didn't seem important to me, but I didn't ask, or assumptions of meaning.
Ray Notes, RAY.
RAE Notes. I'll put that in the chat also. I just love it. And if anybody has time, I can, and I'm trying to think of how much time do we have? We have a couple minutes. Would you guys want to see what it looks like? And I'll show it to you.
Sure.
Okay, so let me get logged in real quick. And then. So what I really like about it is, and I have a recording that I can share with you guys, so you can kind of see how it works. So in this particular recording, it's on metaphors, and I really like it. So I can get the transcript. I can see how much time I'm talking versus how much time the client is talking. I also have the ability to click on this and choose the competency that I think I'm demonstrating, or look at the competencies that I've already chosen, and I can go and click on the different indicators, the behavioral indicators of that competency, so that I can start to really get clarity around like where my strengths are. And maybe I have an overused strength. Maybe my overused strength is I ask clear, open-ended questions, but maybe I could explore some other element. And you do have to clean it up. It doesn't come perfectly done. You have to clean it up, but that forces you to listen to it. But then you can see.
Oh, I love that you brought your hand up so quickly. What is showing up that's important that you'd like to do a bit of coaching around?
Lately I have been like in a space of like hurry up and wait for a lot of different things.
So you can see the words, which is really kind of nice, and you can hear them and you can fix things. But the other thing that you can do is you can export it so that you can have it on paper and you can really start to write on it. The other thing that you can do if you're in a mentor coaching, and I heard you mention mentor coaching, Jeff, if you're doing mentor coaching with somebody, you can share and allow them to edit. And I've given myself permission to edit this, but that means they can come in here, they can see what you've chosen. They can also write notes like, pay attention, this is an important metaphor. And then, you can kind of go through and you can start to see what it is that is showing up in the coaching conversation, what the client is saying again, and what the coach is, how the coach is responding. And so you can start to see where maybe you are adding language to the conversation that the client isn't actually bringing forward, or you can see that you've decided all of a sudden, where they need to get to. So you're leading them towards that golden answer. And it gives you an opportunity to really do a lot of self-reflective practice.
Wow, that's a super cool tool.
It's a really cool tool, and it's like 10 cents a minute or something like that. So it's really affordable, unlike like some of the Rev or some of the other transcription services. You can do your own transcriptions also, but what I like about RevNote or Ray Notes is that they've also put in the competencies. So if you're really looking at the coaching competencies, you don't have to figure that out. They're already built into the system so that you can start to check things off. And it's a great place to start to notice, like, here's where my strengths are. And here's where I have not asked any questions about that ever. Maybe I could start playing with this micro skill that I haven't ever played with before. Like, I noticed your energy shifting as you were talking about that. What just happened? Which I do believe I actually asked something like that because I heard this shift happening and I was curious what was going on. But I mean, it's a great way to really prepare yourself if you're really interested in an ICF certification and you're going to have to do a demonstration. So yeah, it has been so lovely to be with you all. Any last questions or anything else?
Well, it's been great, Lyssa. I've enjoyed hearing you, and inspiring too. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was particularly impressed by your coaching session to Jeff, when Jeff is, obviously this is not something new to him. He's been probably wrestling with this for years and years, up and down. And when he comments, like, it's not ever get a resolution here, but even he's accepting that part as a part of work. You didn't let him to give up on it, continue to juggle and still try to find the meaning, and what satisfaction you find, what is meaning you get out of it, and gently encourage him to it. And I noticed a few times that you continue to facilitate him to have a conversation with himself. The question, you want to say to out loud to yourself, and make him continue to be aware of in conversation within himself. And
Yes.
Quite often we ourselves are so bossy to ourselves. We so discourage ourselves. We make us work like a slave. So
yeah, and I think with coaching, sometimes it can be pretty easy for us to become a cheerleader and be like, I can just tell you, like, you care so much and you're such a giver and you're just so capable and you're so this and you're so that. And those are nice things to hear. I'm not going to say they're not nice things to hear, but they're not nearly as useful as him saying to himself, I need to be a bit more compassionate with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it is about that scale of usefulness in coaching.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Lyssa, for being with us. Really appreciate it. And I think it was during International Coaching Week, I was in on your metaphor training, and it was pretty great. I love metaphors. So might be inviting you back next year to do that with us. That would be good.
You know my email address.
Yes. Sure.
Thank you all so much for being here tonight. And Jeff, you and I will loop up